dramatic news that is really stunning every single person in Israel. There's such elation that President Trump and his extraordinary negotiating team seem to have finalized a deal with Hamas to get every single live hostage out of Gaza and apparently every deceased hostage as well. Is that true? Will it work? Will it go sideways? Will it blow up? How do we deal with the fact that we are trusting the most evil people on the planet? Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg. I'm in Denver right now for All Israel News. As many of you know, my mom just passed away, and after a long illness. So she loved Israel. She and my dad came more times than I can remember, and so I'm here in Denver with my family as everyone's gathering, including my sons from Israel, to honor her and pay respects. So that's why I'm in Denver. But I'm very grateful to be joined by a dear friend and an excellent journalist, Yaakov Katz, who used to be the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, and now, just in recent days, weeks, came out with his new book, absolute must read for every evangelical, every Christian. You don't have to be a Christian. Anybody who's watching this, you got to read this book, While Israel Slept. And it's really a fascinating story. Yes, it's analytical, but it is original reporting with his colleague Amir Bobat of how Israel surprised the most powerful military in the Middle East. Yaakov, thank you for joining me on this huge news day. But I want to start by thank you. Happy Sukkot and a very happy Sukkot. But also, congratulations, kol hakavod, all the respect in Hebrew, for While Israel Slept, because we are reawakening in recent years, and we are on live like I've never seen before right now. But I want to talk to you about the book in this, and then I also want to have you back very quickly in coming days on the program, because the book is so interesting and it's so important, especially right now. But greetings and shalom.
Joel, it's always great to be with you. And let me just open by saying and sending my condolences to you in Denver for the
Thank
loss
you.
of your mother. I know of your family's commitment to the state of Israel and to the Jewish people. So let me just, in her memory, the work that you do is so important. And I'm sure wherever she is, she's proud of all that you do.
Well, thank you very much. I have no doubts that she's in heaven. I look forward to seeing her one day. And yeah, she started. She not only loves Jewish people, she loved a particular Jewish person, and that was my father. And they got married back in 1965, and 60 years of marriage.
Wow.
Just They used to joke that the first 50 were the hardest, but then the challenges of health as they got older than that, I think made the last few years particularly challenging. But we have no regrets. Loved her. She was a great mom and a great wife and a great grandmother and all the rest. And so, yeah, it'll be great to honor her and celebrate her life. So, Yaakov, first of all, where were you and what were you doing when the news began to break, even some leaks last night before President Trump actually formally put out his social media message? But what was your reaction?
I
What's
mean,
your
yeah,
reaction waking
already
up?
last night there were indications that there was some optimism that if the talks had begun and it seemed like there was a wide divide between the different negotiating teams of Israel and Hamas, suddenly last evening at about 7, 8 p.m. Israel time, reports started to come out that the Israeli side was becoming optimistic and that a deal might be reached within the next 24 to 36 hours. I don't know that anyone really anticipated that it was going to be much faster than that, at least here in Israel. But already a little after midnight Israel time, it seemed to be that this was coming and it was coming fast. I actually dozed off at some point, woke up again, saw the Trump tweet, saw the real celebrations that were breaking out here in Israel at Hostage Square and among people who have been impacted by this war, which is pretty much the entire country. It's a moment of great relief. There still is trepidation. There
Sure.
is cautious optimism. Let's wait to see that these hostages are coming home, in fact. And we're hearing now from the president that it will take place potentially on Monday or Tuesday. The
Right.
president is also expected to make his way to Israel to
Yeah.
address the
That's
Knesset, the
huge.
Israeli parliament, which
Which has
is,
never happened. As far as I'm aware, no American president has actually ever addressed the Knesset. I know Vice President Mike Pence addressed. I was there to cover it,
George
and I
W. Bush did
oh,
give
did he?
an address to the Israeli Knesset.
Oh,
Barack
wonderful.
Obama, when he did visit here, was asked to speak to the Knesset, but he preferred not to, and actually spoke
Hmm.
to university students at some
Okay.
convention hall. But I mean, listen,
Yeah.
this is
Okay.
going to be President Trump's first visit in his second term to the state
Right.
of Israel. It's monumental. It comes at a time of great, I would say, opportunity now in the wake of this ceasefire and this deal. And there's still a lot that has to be worked out. But him coming here and giving Israelis this hug
Yeah.
and this support at a time like this means so much to the Israeli people.
It really does, and it's strange, but appropriate that I'm here and not in Israel, not in Jerusalem, my own home city, to cover his arrival. But I'm very touched that he's decided to do it. I understand now that news is breaking that he's going to go to Egypt first. I'm not sure if that's confirmed, but I think it is. I know President El-Sisi invited him to come to the formal signing, but I thought the signing was in motion. So, what do you know about that at this point?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of mixed, different reports that are coming out. Not exactly everything being clear where he's going, when he's going. There was a draft that was signed. From my understanding, what I've heard from government sources, that Friday will be the official signing of the deal. Not sure if Trump will be participating in that, but
I
these
think
really,
he had what I heard was that he had a doctor's appointment on Friday morning. So I don't know, maybe he's got to get his tonsils out, or he's getting a tetanus
I
shot, or I'm
think,
not
yeah,
sure
there's
what.
something like the annual presidential checkup or something. But the Israeli cabinet is meeting as we speak, as we're recording this Thursday evening Israel time,
Yeah,
and they are voting as we speak. I mean, it's going to pass. That's not
yeah,
the issue. And from when it passes, this deal will start to move forward, and it will come in stages.
yeah,
The first stage will be see that the hostages are released, and then Israel withdraws to the pre-approved lines based on that map that Donald Trump had put out, pretty much for the most part, when he rolled out the 20-point plan about a week and a half ago. And then as things progress, we will see what happens. But a lot of those details, Joel, still have to be ironed out, right? Exactly how this all is
sure.
going to play out.
Sure. I saw an interview with our mutual friend, Israeli Foreign Minister Gidon Sar. He gave his first interview of actually the first interview of any Israeli official so far in an official capacity. He gave it to Jennifer Griffin of Fox News, and I thought it was interesting that he said when he first read the Hamas response to the Trump peace plan, he read that as a no. And I think many Israelis, knowing Hamas and just having been through this, and I don't know that we're cynics, but we're certainly deep skeptics of anything that Hamas would say. But I thought it was interesting that Guidon would say, sort of on the air in public, I did not read this as a positive, but President Trump, in his brilliance, saw enough of a yes in there to decide to latch on to it. Essentially, I'm not quoting directly, but I'm paraphrasing. But to latch onto it and to explore it and see can we because Trump is looking for a yes, right? He's a deal maker, and so if he saw anything that indicated a yes, he seemed to have some level of confidence, and that must be from our own, U.S. and Israeli negotiators and probably American sources in Qatar, in Turkey, that this this was not a no, that this was, but Hamas needed some more technical and practical details. I don't know. Well, time will tell. Maybe your next book will tell us in detail. We may know well before that. But do you have any sense from your own reporting of kind of how this went from there's no chance in hell that they're going to release everybody, right? I don't personally know a single Israeli official or analyst, even maybe, I don't know all of them, who was saying, "Oh, Hamas someday will give up all of them." It just always felt like to me, like people were saying that's their last chit. That's their last bit of leverage. So they may give up some, but they're not going to give up all. What do you think changed, and how did it change?
Well, I think that there was definitely a lot of skepticism that Hamas was going to agree to such a deal that was basically, if we think about it, calls for the disarmament of Hamas
Yeah.
and the removal of Hamas as the governing entity over the Gaza Strip.
It's
And also
effectively the surrender
it's the
of
surrender of
Hamas.
Hamas and the fact that the hostages are being released
Right.
means that it loses whatever insurance policy and card that it was going to have that would have potentially insured that is able to live to fight another day
Right.
and to continue to remain a player in Gaza. I think that the change here and the person who really deserves the credit, I would say, I would kind of say it's a mixed bag. On the one
Okay. I'm
hand,
curious what you're thinking.
there's no question, and to all the people out there who have been calling for an end to this war for a very long time, I always would ask them, what do you think happens? You think that Israel just stops, pulls out its soldiers, and Hamas, out of the kindness of its heart, decides to hand over the hostages and disarm and say, we're done? Of course not, right? You know
Right.
that. I know that. Military pressure has always been a crucial component of any deal that was ever going to be made. It was only when Hamas felt real, genuine pressure that it was pushed into a deal, and it felt that it was in its interest to go towards and make that deal. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, so you have the Gaza City offensive that's going ahead, despite the criticism from the world, despite the fact that the French and the British and the Australians and the Canadians and so many more are independently recognizing a Palestinian state. They're condemning Israel. Israel's being isolated. Israel's saying, listen, we get it, but what we're doing here is the right way. So to the prime minister of Israel, no question that his fortitude and determination and resolve was of superior and supreme importance. But we can't forget that without this president and really without his ability, and we could speculate, Joel, how it is that he's able to pull this off, right? But I think that he comes with great determination, also great resolve. But I think one of his key assets, just in my humble opinion, is his unpredictability. And people are scared. But I think that in one of the things that I wrote for my column in the Jerusalem Post after this deal was that what America showed us in making this deal is that America still is the world superpower. It is
Amen.
a country that has great leverage over other countries. It has leverage over Israel, and the president used that. It has leverage over Turkey and Qatar and Egypt, and the president used that to get them to put the pressure on Hamas, to get Hamas to make the deal. So all of this together is what made this deal possible, and it would not have happened. Let's be honest for a moment. It would not have happened, I think, with a different president in the Oval Office.
Well, it didn't happen. I mean, President Biden showed tremendous warmth, affection, and solidarity with Israel, coming in, bringing Air Force One in
Yeah.
in the early weeks of a hot war, the long has turned into the longest and most painful any war in modern Israeli history. And President Biden gets a lot of credit for that. I'm a critic of him on many fronts, but but being the first American president ever to come into
During
in the
wartime.
midst of an Arab-Israeli war was pretty impressive. His compassion for the hostages and his time spent with hostage families and others. Our friend Amir Tibon and his father spending time with the president. All that was just a huge moment of solidarity. But in the end, they got some done, and they get credit for that. But they couldn't get this thing to the
No.
end. President Trump wasn't even sworn in yet in his second term, and he and Steve Witkoff delivered another deal that had been languishing for month after month after month. So it really is tremendous, and I think you're right. His unpredictability, but also his willingness to. I think what and it may again. Hopefully the reporting comes out before a full book is needed, but I think he was putting pressure on Qatar and Turkey in ways that he's giving them. It's like um, a steel fist inside a velvet glove. He's being very warm to the Qataris, and not just because he got a plane, right? He's being very warm, and I think, in my view, personally, unduly warm to the Qataris and to the Turks. But he's warming them into this, recognizing they are assets and they're supposed American allies. So let's use them and tell them, look, but I think there are things that have happened behind the scenes that have convinced the Turks and particularly Erdogan and the Qatari leadership, this is it. And
Well,
I don't know what that is, but I'm curious. Yeah.
but and I don't know exactly either. But what we do know is that there is huge American leverage over both of these countries and
Yes.
over Egypt, right? Everybody, look, Israelis want to look at it through the prism of Israel, and that's natural. And also, it's always going to fall on political lines, right? If you're supporting Netanyahu, you're going to say, look at what Netanyahu achieved. And if you're
Right.
against Netanyahu, you're going to say, look at how Trump twisted Netanyahu's arm.
Right.
But so, 100% there was leverage over Israel. But Turkey, I mean, they want to they want agreements with America over what happens in Syria. They want to buy the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter from the United States. They have regional ambitions and they want to keep those in line with America. They need Donald Trump. Qatar, while you're right that it seems that the Qataris are more running America than America running Qatar, but I agree with you that to some extent this presidential order that was given made just about a week ago in the wake of Israel's failed attack against Hamas headquarters in Doha, that the president said basically upgrading the relationship with Qatar to almost like NATO made it seem like, now America's in Qatar's pocket. But I agree with you that actually what it did was it made the Qataris understand how much they need America.
Yeah.
And therefore, when the president said to the Qataris, listen, guys, and the Turks, by the way, because we saw the Turkish intelligence chief taking part in these talks. And these aren't, for people who don't know, Qatar, Turkey, Egypt are not just random countries, and just because they're Muslim or Arab, that's why they're involved. These are the countries where Hamas has spent its time. This is the countries where Hamas has had headquarters and
Absolutely.
bases. And
Right. They're not sneaking around in back
right.
alleys.
So
They're living in luxury high-rise apartments.
Exactly. So if you're a Hamas leader and you're thinking about where am I going, if you don't have the Qataris or the Egyptians or the Turks, you don't really have where to go. And therefore, they need that gives those countries major leverage over Hamas. And of course, the US has major leverage over Qatar and Turkey and Egypt, which is a big recipient of US military aid. So this was Trump really, and I go back to what we said before. This is America being America. This is why America is the country that it is. And it should make us proud, and it should make us recognize just the value and the importance of the Israel-US relationship, how important it is for the existence of Israel. And I would say how important it is that America continues to play this role to secure its interests in this region.
Yeah. Well put. I want to ask you just a couple more questions for this video, and then we're going to have you back to talk in more depth about your book, because this is the this is the postscript now. This is the new epilogue, the new forward and epilogue to when the next edition comes out. But while Israel slept, and I'm just going to put this up here again, this is a must read for anybody interested in what really happened. How did we get to October 7th? Now, the next story is how did we get to where we are today, October 9th of 2025, because this is what looks like one of the most massive breakthroughs. Now, I'm more positive and optimistic about getting all the hostages out. I I trust that President Trump has a lot more information because of a lot more conversations behind the scenes with him and his team about where this can go regionally. The fact that the entire region has bought into this plan and that he's called out people like MBZ, Mohammed bin Zayed, the president of the United Arab Emirates, and ABZ, his younger brother, who's the Abdullah bin Zayed, who's the foreign minister of the UAE, and of course the Saudi leaderships and so forth. He hasn't talked so much by name about the Egyptians and the Jordanians, interestingly, but it's not that he slighted them. I'm just saying I think the richer more successful Arab leaders in the Gulf, he's giving that nod because they're the ones who can rebuild. And they're the ones
Exactly.
that Trump has gotten these other deals with when he didn't go to Israel a few months ago, when he did go to Saudi and the UAE and Qatar. All that to say, it is really an extraordinary convergence of things, and I would say it's miraculous. I really think at this point, I don't say that by taking away anything from the players who did it, much less the Israeli soldiers who have fought so bravely, such like lions, to make this possible, and have put their lives on the line, and many of them have given the ultimate sacrifice to get all of these hostages back. But I think ultimately the God of Israel has intervened here to push this over the top because, 24, well, let's say 48 hours ago, I don't think anybody thought that this could really or that it would happen. It might happen. It could happen. Anything is possible. But, Trump has been optimistic about things before. So I want to ask you, but I want to shift to this real quickly. Everybody who's watching this, because everybody in the United States and everybody who loves Israel is asking, okay, but we're talking about Hamas. What's your level of suspicion or caution? And we literally yesterday, Wednesday, as we record this, a team of 5 Hamas terrorists popped out of a tunnel and tried to capture an Israeli soldier, and there was a gunfight. Like this is yesterday.
Yeah.
So what level of confidence do you have that of what happens well, first of all, I guess let me break it into 2 questions. One, do you think we get to actual delivery of and the arrival of all of our hostages Monday, Tuesday of next week without incident? And then secondly, where do we go from here? Like how do you really demilitarize and disarm and de-radicalize Hamas and Gaza when the Israelis have moved from maybe 86% of control to maybe 53%, I think is the number. So 2 different questions, but both based
I
on
mean,
people
look,
feel like,
I'm
is this
I'm
real? Is this going to happen?
I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic because I see how much of the world is invested in this. Definitely, the president has invested his own personal and political capital, but you see really this entire region aligned and coordinated in a way that we have not seen, I don't know, last when. And therefore, for this to be happening, a lot can go wrong, and Hamas is a barbaric, murderous, cynical terrorist organization. So until those 20 hostages who are presumed to be alive are released and are back in the arms of their loved ones, we will be holding our breaths like everybody else in this country and probably many around the world. So we will have to wait. But assuming that does happen, the bigger question, and you're 100% right, is okay, so we get to that stage, and Israel pulls back to those agreed upon lines that the president showed in that map, which is about 50 or so percent of Gaza, but along the border, so on the eastern front, no longer really deep inside the population centers. At some point, according to the president's vision and the plan that he rolled out about 10 days ago, Israel will pull out completely from Gaza and will withdraw after, and the language there was a little vague, when Gaza is no longer, Hamas is no longer a security threat to Israel. And how do we gauge that? How do we decide that? At what point is that decision or determination made? We don't know, right? When does the new government come into effect? We also don't yet know. Who is going to lead the new government? Who's coming from the Palestinian Authority to be there? How is this all going to work? What is the international security force that they spoke about that's going to be there? That's going to have the Arab country participation and maybe other countries. Who's going to rule it? There's so many different pieces here, Joel, to this puzzle that really leave a lot of, I don't want to say doubt or skepticism, but a lot has to be worked out for this to really work. And let's just say what's obvious. We all need it to work, because if it doesn't, we're back at war.
Right.
I mean, let's be very straightforward. If Hamas is still in control of Gaza, and there is not a new government, and Hamas is not disarmed, and it does try to reconstitute, and it does try to reestablish its rule in different places, Israel's not going anywhere, and legitimately so. So
Yeah.
the world needs this to work. We in Israel want this to work because we want the war over. We want to be able to heal. And the Palestinian civilians in Gaza who have suffered really a remarkable tragedy
Yeah.
that I would argue is the result is Hamas's fault, but nonetheless, it
Right.
is a
Right.
tragedy. They
Yeah.
need to be able to rebuild. They need to have a better future for themselves. So we
Yeah.
all need this to work now.
Amen. My wife and I feel very personal about it, not just by being Israelis and being there, but because our youngest of our four sons, the others having served, two of them having served, was drafted May 4th and is in a combat unit. He's still in training, but I mean, this like if this doesn't get finished up in the next few months, he would very likely be there.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we're praying more or more passionately because we care about every Israeli parent and grandparent and brother and sister and soldier. But it's added a
But you know what, Joel,
personal stake, you know?
what you're telling is that I think something that a lot of people around the world don't fully understand and appreciate is that for every Israeli, pretty much, this is personal.
Yes.
It's not some vague, distant conflict. You know, in America, there are people who wars that America has engaged in over the years are personal because they have loved ones who go overseas and fight, whether it was in Afghanistan or Iraq or
Right.
Vietnam back in the day or World War II, of course. But in Israel, every Israeli almost serves.
Yeah.
Every home has soldiers, has reservists, has people who have been killed in this war, abducted in this war, wounded in this war. There's not a single family in all of Israel, I think, that hasn't been affected one way or the other. This isn't some war that you sit back and you say it's happening over there and it
Right.
doesn't affect me.
Well, and part of that's because of the draft, right?
Correct.
So whether you're in a synagogue and half or most of the men are missing because they're in reserves, or in our evangelical congregation or our messianic congregation, most of the men are gone, right? So and then so therefore their wives, their kids, you're caring for them, and these men because most of our synagogues or congregations that are Christian are these are relatively small and they're intimate and they're personal, and you are getting updates in real time from your friends and whose kids can't sleep and who are having trouble in school and all of us are in bomb shelters so often. So all right, one more question for now, and I appreciate you underscoring. I wasn't thinking about that so much. I was just thinking, yeah, how personal it is that we've wanted this war to be over from October 7th at 7:30 in the morning, 6:45, whatever it was. One more question though. It's a little early, but I'm curious your assessment of how this affects Israeli politics. Obviously, Prime Minister Netanyahu, I have criticisms of him, but I think that he has been the right wartime leader because I think he has not. I think his personal political fortunes have been fused to the country's. I know many cynics and many critics have said that Netanyahu is prolonging the war in order to stay in power. Knowing him personally for 25 years, I don't see that. I think he's a patriot. I think he's made mistakes on a number of areas, and I think he's a strong cup of tea, and not everyone wants to work with him. And then there's a number of other things, but I think just the opposite. I think that he has decided he's willing to take the international and even domestic slings and arrows in order to not surrender. What President Biden was basically asking him to do a year ago, May, was look, just take a ceasefire. That's it. We'll get all the hostages back and then just stop. But he saw that as surrender. And I think he has been determined to see this through. And I am appreciative of that. But I will say that my own instinct is that while he sees himself as Winston Churchill, he also is Winston Churchill domestically. And I don't think he's planning to run. And I think that's why he feels like if this could be his crowning achievement, I'm not sure what else he thinks he could do. And right now, the numbers don't look like he could even gather a majority, though I think they're shifting in recent days. But is that premature? Do you think he's going to try to ride this thing into, yet another term. What's your sense of things? Yeah, you're a pretty
Oh,
astute observer of Israeli domestic politics.
I'll tell you that I agree with your analysis. I have also, throughout the war, rejected the idea that he is prolonging the war just for his own political interest. I don't think that's the case. And what I've long argued is that if you believe that this is all about political expediency, then getting back the hostages is the best political win for
Right,
you to have, right? So
right,
why would you not want to do that if you had a deal that
absolutely.
you could have gotten?
And
Why
say
would
we'll
you
fight
not
the
have
rest
taken it?
another day. Exactly.
Right. So what I will say though is I think that certain elements or aspects of how it was managed were politically motivated. And one small example was, Israel throughout this war refused so many times to articulate what it is that it wanted to see happen the day after, knowing that this plan that Trump ultimately rolled out was in the works. And the reason they said they couldn't talk about it was because they didn't want to ruin the chances of it from succeeding. But I also think they didn't want to talk about it because they didn't want to get the political headache from
Right,
having what the
right.
partners would. But this would not have shortened the war. What it could have done was maybe lowered or decreased the criticism of Israel, because here people around the world would have seen a day after plan, which they did not see. Excuse me, but that this was not about prolonging the war. So I agree with you on that. Where I see this going is, look, October 7th is a coin with two sides. One side of it is what the book is about: the failures, the policies, the tactical, the strategic, the decisions that were made also by Benjamin Netanyahu and others
Yeah.
that led to this fairy tale that we believed in and this policy of containment that we implemented that blew up in our faces on October 7th and dragged us into a war that none of us ever imagined was possible. But the other side of October 7th are the 2 years that have passed. Iran is on the defensive. Its
Yeah.
nuclear infrastructure significantly degraded, if not destroyed, and its race to a nuclear weapon delayed and postponed significantly. Hezbollah beaten.
Right.
It's with the pager attack, the elimination of its top leadership and their successors, the elimination and destruction of their long-range missile capability, and a new government in Lebanon that's actively trying to round up those weapons. Syria, Assad falling,
Right.
and the new leadership there, who, yes, he was Al Qaeda not long ago, Ahmed Ashara, but already talking in a way of a security arrangement with Israel and maybe one day normalization, and Gaza on the cusp now of the end of the war and a reconstruction and a de-radicalization and a new government that could change the whole equation. And think, Joel, I don't have to tell you this, and you've been in these countries and you've had these conversations, normalization that might come with Saudi Arabia now that the war is over and we're back on track. So does Netanyahu
Indonesia, yeah,
deserve
and others, yeah, right.
does Netanyahu deserve the blame and to be held accountable for the failures that led to October 7th? 100%. But does he deserve the credit for the re-engineering of the Middle East since October 7th? Also 100%. That's a mixed bag. And with that, Israelis will go to the polls, hopefully sooner than later, because we need a new government. We need
Yeah.
to restore trust and confidence in our government and in our state institutions. But what I want to see in the aftermath of an election, and I have lots of criticism of Netanyahu. Listen, I wrote the book about how this all, how I think it happened. But with that said, we have to stop with the, personal politics of it. We have to recognize the challenges that we have on our borders internally, and we need a government that is wide and united and large, and no more of this boycotting different people. I won't sit with this guy or I won't sit with that guy. Let's see what happens. Let's see how the cards fall. And if he comes out on top, then I will call from here for what it's worth. For all those other parties that have refused to sit with him until now, it's time to get over that. We have to put the country first and the people first, and the issues that we face have to come first.
Well, I appreciate your analysis very much. Folks, the book is While Israel Slept. The author is Yaakov Katz. We'll at some point let's connect with Amir as well, because he was your co-author and reporter on this tremendous book. Really, the story of how Hamas surprised the most powerful military in the world, and yet in the Middle East rather, and yet we are now it all, by all appearances, we are in the end game, at least to get all our hostages back. And then President Trump has invested a lot of time and a lot of political capital on a roadmap that he believes, and now he's getting buy-in from every reasonable government in the region, and even some governments I'm not so happy about in Europe are saying this is the plan. And Let's pray. Let's keep praying. Let's not give up, Jews and Christians, to keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Yaakov Katz, thank you so much for being on this program of All Israel News, and I'll have you back very, very soon.
Thank you.